Welcome to our discussion today, Empowering the Early Childhood Workforce with the Environment Rating Scales using LearnERS. I'm Debbie Mathias from the BUILD Initiative and the director of the Early Childhood Quality Improvement Systems Network. BUILD works with community, state, and national partners to develop early childhood systems that are equitable and excellent for all marginalized children, their families, and communities. BUILD partners with state early childhood leaders to catalyze change and implement a whole child, whole systems vision. We have colleagues from over 45 states and territories registered for this session. When you registered, we asked what you hope to learn or hear about in the session. Responses pointed directly to our content, including they're interested in how other states are using LearnERS and other tools to support improvement. Someone wanted to know more about LearnERS and how it can support teachers in digestible, manageable pieces, improve practice, and feel a sense of accomplishment. From exploring and testing strategies to improve, recruit, and compensate, including benefits, state leaders in collaboration with providers are working on workforce retention and satisfaction issues. One strategy is related to improving the experience of staff in the program and staff engagement in their work. Some ideas are around regular paid planning time, collaboration, and professional learning time built right into the schedule so that it's not all contact all the time with children, a break for reflection. We've heard questions from a number of state leaders about how to create this culture of learning and an environment for improving practice in a supportive, strength-based fashion, such as how to use reflective practice and build a more direct theory to implementation to evaluation cycle of learning within their programs. We've also heard that state leaders are interested in hearing more about LearnERS specifically and how it can support providers in developing a learning organizational culture to improve children's experiences. This is one example of a tool that could be used to support this cycle of improvement and help develop this culture. And others are emerging. This is one example to help you understand. Now we'll go over the agenda for today. Well, we've already started with a welcome and introduction. We're going to have a little overview of LearnERS, but get right pretty quickly to our state examples. We're going to have plenty of time to work on the questions and ideas that you, in response to your ideas in the chat box. So we're interested in those questions, ideas, and thoughts about the session. So please enter into the chat box as something strikes you. Or if you have a resource or strategy to contribute from your work, please share. If you have a question, please use the Q&A tab. This helps us locate questions quickly during the session. Now I'd like to move to introducing our panel. I'd like to begin with Tara Kadzalowski. Tara oversees the professional development initiatives for the Brana Group, with a focus on using the environment rating scales for continuing quality improvement. Dilcia Perdumo is a bilingual Bright Stars navigator in New Jersey and has a passion for helping programs work toward improving their overall quality while supporting and advocating for all children and families. Susie Norris from Arkansas State University Childhood Services is on the Technical Assistance and Environment Rating Scale team. Finally, Kimberly Owens is the manager of early childhood initiatives at Rutgers University School of Social Work, the Institute for Families. In her previous role, Kim worked as the New Jersey Department of Human Services for Grow New Jersey Kids. Now I'd like to turn it over to Tara to say a little bit about LearnERS and facilitate our state examples. Take it away, Tara.
Thanks, Debbie. I am really excited to have you hear from three amazing leaders today who are working to support the early childhood workforce. They each have a unique story to share, and I believe that there's going to be something that you can connect with, and I hope that you find something that inspires you about their work. Before I turn it over to them, I want to give you just a brief overview of LearnERS because they're all going to mention how they use it. Just so you have this basic understanding. There's three main components. They're the online learning modules, which teachers and providers, directors and coaches can actually all use and go through at their own pace on their own time. And within each module, there are reflective questions that, as they answer them, get populated into an individualized continuous quality improvement journal. And at the end of the module, they're asked to select a goal to work on towards their quality improvements. Once the module is completed, they can print up this CQI journal and have it as their living, breathing document to use for their quality improvement journey. And then the third component are these peer learning team sessions where they come together and meet with colleagues and maybe sometimes their director and coach as well. And that's kind of where some of the real magic happens as far as this social learning and being able to really process what they've learned and talk about the goals that they're working on. So now I want to turn it over to Kim Owens to tell you a little bit about how New Jersey has used LearnERS.
Great, thank you, Tara. Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Owens. I'm the manager of Early Childhood Initiatives at Rutgers University School of Social Work at the Institute for Families. And so Grow and J Kids Training Services at the Institute for Families is the statewide training partner that provides professional development opportunities for New Jersey for those enrolled in New Jersey's QRIS, which is Grow and J Kids, and also for programs receiving child care development block funding. Grow and J Kids Training Services and the LearnERS project in New Jersey are funded by the New Jersey Department of Human Services, Division of Family Development. And we can move to the next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about in New Jersey, just to give some context prior to getting into LearnERS, why the why became important. And so learning the why became an important detail that was learned through New Jersey's QRIS, Grow and J Kids, which began with a pilot in 2013 and expanded statewide in 2014. And through feedback shared over the years through Grow and J Kids rating and continuous quality improvement efforts, there was this need to understand the why behind the environment rating scales for leaders, for directors, for providers, for teachers. We wanted the focus to not just be about the score of the ERS, but also about what was good for children and what was best practice for early childhood educators. And so in 2020, the unexpected happened, and it's hard to imagine that we're actually at the 3-year mark this week, that all of the in-person activities that we were used to in New Jersey, including coaching, training, all of that infrastructure that we had to support early childhood programs, including rating for Grow and J Kids, came to a halt. And so only emergency childcare programs were able to be open, many programs were closed, and no in-person activities were able to be conducted. So this was a real shift in New Jersey. And so during the months of March and April of 2020, New Jersey state leaders of the Department of Human Services started to look at some options for professional development for coaches. And so when I say coaches, I'm going to give a little, I'm using that term broadly. So I want to pinpoint who I mean by coaches. Coaches are infant toddler specialists located at the CCR&Rs, also quality improvement specialists at the CCR&Rs, and technical assistant specialists located at the Grow and J Kids Technical Assistance Centers in New Jersey. And so just to give some context, that's about 130 coaches that support programs across the state of New Jersey. And just to give even more context, In New Jersey, we have about 21 counties. And in those 21 counties, we have about 1,200 family child care providers and about 4,000 child care centers. And so New Jersey implemented the LearnERS orientations in May of 2020 in partnership with Brannick. Brannick was the trainers for those LearnERS orientations. And those happened in May of 2020. And during this time, this was an opportunity for coaches to receive professional development, to take a deep dive into the ERS. And this was really for their own development. And so New Jersey did pair this opportunity with an already existing framework that existed in New Jersey, which I'll describe a little bit more in depth in a moment. But first, I have to provide some background information. In 2016, the Early Childhood Leadership Institute, or ECLI, as we call it, which is a part of the Center for Access and Success and Equity at Rowan University, began providing support to coaches in New Jersey through orientation, small group coaching. This work is also funded by the New Jersey Department of Human Services. And so going back to that pairing of the framework that I mentioned, this was seen as a possible opportunity to leverage that existing framework that was already developed through the work of ECLI and link it to the LearnERS professional development that was happening within the coaches. And so this was very intentional as far as continuous quality improvement as a resource that was available now to coaches. So this was a partnership between the LearnERS professional development that the coaches were going through, and then also the work that ECLI was doing with our coaches. The good news was most of the work that ECLI was doing with our coaches was virtual, so this was implemented with ease. We knew that at that time, not all the coaches were in a place and capacity to be stretched to take on something new. So ECLI offered the LearnERS as a voluntary opportunity to have some small group coaching with peers and an ECLI mentor to support their work in the LearnERS and keep that relationship going that had been developed in the past few years. We can move to the next slide, please. And so the professional development that was then experienced through the LearnERS with our coaches, the coaches grew in their understanding of the why of the LearnERS and actually started to think about how to use virtual supports with their programs. And so it gave them time to provide that reflection within a variety of topics with their programs, and also gave the ability for coaches to start to connect with their programs when they weren't able to go in person to classrooms, centers, and homes. And so our coaches jumped right in New Jersey. They started to establish Google Classrooms, Zoom check-ins, podcasts, and other virtual supports to connect with their programs. And so at this time, the New Jersey leaders started to think about how could we connect what was happening within the LearnERS with our coaches to be a virtual support with our programs at the same time. And so at this time of not being able to be in the classroom to provide that one-on-one technical assistance, how could we embed the process of CQI and the LearnERS into the possible work of the centers? And so when we considered this pilot in New Jersey for LearnERS, it was really about finding a balance about how to let the LearnERS complement what was happening in the programs and not to overburden programs with what was happening. And so the items that we selected from the ITERs and ECHRs for the LearnERS pilot were again meant to complement what was happening in the programs, especially as our programs were reopening and implementing a variety of health and safety guidelines associated with COVID-19. And so outreach began for those interested in participating in a LearnERS pilot for New Jersey. And we did this outreach through our coaches to seek interest in programs, including coaches that worked with childcare centers, Head Start programs, and school district programs or public preschool. And so we had a participation agreement that was shared with the programs, which outlined expectations from our coaches, from the program lead or the director, and then also from the teachers that worked within those centers in those classrooms. And so in February of 2021, the LearnERS pilot was established in New Jersey, and this was with 30 programs and the 30 coaches that supported those programs. Within those 30 programs, we had a total of 147 participants. So 30 programs, 147 participants that made up of teachers and directors, And then we also, as I said, had the 30 coaches that supported them. And through this pilot, we really felt like the teachers were fully engaged in the learners' experience. And so 3 modules were selected, 3 items within each of the modules. And then those modules were paired with those peer learning groups, as Tara mentioned in her explanation of the LearnERS. And so people are probably wondering which items we selected. So I'll go through which items we selected for the pilot. And so for the ITERs, we selected staff-child interactions, gross motor, and meals and snacks. And for the ECHRs, we selected child-related display, transitions and wait times, and meals and snacks. And so for the LearnERS pilot in New Jersey, we did have a specific cycle that we had our programs follow. And so the cycle consisted of a focus on one item, those items that I just mentioned, either in the ITERs or the ECHRs, and programs had access to complete that module within a 3-week period. At the end of those 3 weeks, in that 4th week of the month, we then had those participants attend a peer learning group in that 4th week. So it was, as I mentioned, like a 4-month time frame that we did this pilot, giving a month for each of those modules, three weeks to finish the item, and then 1 week to schedule and have that peer learning group. And so peer learning groups were established not only just within programs, but also across programs and age groups. And so we had about 6 to 10 participants in those peer learning groups with their coaches accompanying them. As a part of the pilot, the LearnERS pilot, we did offer incentives for those that joined the LearnERS pilot. And the first incentive that we offered was professional development and training hours for all of the work that was put into both the modules and then the peer learning groups that they participated in. In addition, each program that participated did receive a laptop for their work in the LearnERS pilot. And also at the end and conclusion of the pilot, they received a $500 gift card for educational materials to be purchased that would then support their CQI efforts that were identified as a need through their work through the LearnERS modules. So it was really exciting to be able to link not only what they are doing in the CQI journals, but also to what do they need for their classroom that they could possibly make improvements with the things that they've identified through their work in the LearnERS modules. And so you'll hear a little later in the presentation from Arkansas and Susie about some of the lessons learned with the experience in the LearnERS modules. And so we also experienced some of those lessons learned. So I won't go into detail because Susie's going to cover that in her presentation. But I do want to just give a brief summary of those lessons learned from New Jersey. And so I'll sum those up in kind of 2 buckets. Leadership matters, and the directors and the program leaders have to be involved and committed. And also, in order to be successful within the LearnERS, you really have to have that commitment to CQI and being that reflective practice. And also, again, just the time that it takes to be committed to the LearnERS modules. And so for New Jersey, upon completion of the pilot, we did hold focus groups for the coaches and also for the teachers, directors, and staff that participated in the LearnERS pilot. And overall, all that feedback was really exciting and positive. We have continued to give access to all those that did take part in the pilot. We've given them the option to continue access to the LearnERS, to continue using it as a part of their continuous quality improvement efforts within their programs. So it's really exciting. And so as I conclude, I wanted to not just talk about what we learned in New Jersey and what our coaches learned, but also what we felt that we received feedback from as far as those that participated in the peer learning groups and then also within the CQI journals. And I think these statements not only highlight the success of our pilot, but also that focus on the why it matters that's highlighted often within the LearnERS modules. And so I'm just going to summarize a few of these, but some of these are taken directly from statements that were made from teachers or directors as a part of the CQI efforts. And so Supervision became more, I'm going to read these just so that I have them right. Supervision became more of an interaction rather than just watching. Children are eager for new activities. How do I make gross motor more appropriate for the age group I work with? I want, and this was stressed in all caps, meal times to be more relaxed and conversational. I see the need for independence, development of each child, and I'm going to make strategies to improve it. I'm going to talk to my director to see if my ideas make sense. I will give children who need more time to eat the option to stay at the table while the rest of the class starts circle time. And it matters because children need support from their caregivers and time and space to develop. So I just wanted to highlight those because I thought those were really impactful and just highlight the empowerment from some of the teachers to just really think about what they can do in the classroom to improve the environments and the experience for the children in their programs. And so I just want to say thank you for your time today and for listening to New Jersey's story about our work with the LearnERS.
Thanks, Kim, for sharing your story. Gosh, there's so many different things that kind of come to mind as I hear you back. I noticed too, some of the comments in the chat were about one, just this idea of really having the coaches kind of go through their own process and being reflective in let me see here. It's interesting to think about how the support of the coaches and deep understanding of the content, as well as using reflective practice to deepen the experience for the teachers and support of the directors, and understanding how critical the support of the teachers' learning and growth can be established in a culture of learning and reflection. So I don't know, it sounds like there was some intention, but also some can't think of the word that I'm trying to use right now. But just like some magic really happening and things coming together, right, for that to happen. The fact that in 2016, was it that you said that there was this already ongoing support for coaches that came together with this?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, you know, there was the support that existed through ECLI at Rowan University, and they really had that already that framework already there that existed within our coaches for support. And so those conversations, the peer conversations, the small group sessions were already there. And so the LearnERS gave that platform for not only a deeper understanding. Most of our coaches are familiar with the ERS, they know the ERS, but I think it gave them also the opportunity to have some ways to explain the why that might have been different than what they had already used in their explanations and supportive programs. So it gave them some other examples of the why behind the ERS. And I think that part of that professional development and learning was just a really important opportunity for our coaches.
Yeah, I wonder too, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of speaking a little bit to it now, that they might have had a different way to explain it, but I'm kind of wondering if you can tell, did something happen or really change in the way that coaches approached their coaching from before the pandemic, when they were in person and kind of doing their thing and had their way of going about it, to having this little pause, having time to process this particular coaching framework, and how they might start approaching it going forward or through the pilot program?
Sure. So I do think, you know, with that change, and I mentioned our whole infrastructure for New Jersey was in person. All of our training was in person. All of our coaching was in person. The rating was in person. So it really, I think, gave that opportunity to bring those virtual supports in, link them to LearnERS, and also think about how to use virtual coaching, maybe to even meet the needs of the programs. And so they might not be able to commit you visiting the program for, you know, a couple of hours, but they could commit to, you know, a 15-minute, 30-minute focused reflection on an area or an item within LearnERS or something else. So I think it gave the opportunity for some flexibility within our coaches and their ability to support the programs and still have those relationships with programs, but not being in person, maybe think about them a little bit differently. So I definitely saw that kind of movement during those few months. in early 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I also wondered too, so you said that during the pilot, there were like 30 programs, 100, almost 150 teachers that were participating. And then at the end of the pilot, people had the opportunity to extend their access to the modules, and then they probably had to continue the peer learning and their own
Correct.
after
Yeah,
that.
that's correct.
Do you know how many people or programs chose to continue?
I think we still have about 130 on that we have in the LearnERS. So I'd say probably about, and this is roughly about 80% that were in the pilot are still participating in the LearnERS platform. So it's still a large number, and we still have coaches that are working with them within the programs as well. So it's so exciting, and many chose to continue it. We were excited to receive such great feedback at the time when we asked them if they would like to be continuing that access to the LearnERS.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes I hear this, just based on where I am and how I get to hear what's happening with each client. But it sounds it still surprises me sometimes that how many people continue to do this when it's not it doesn't sound like it was really required before. It was like an option for people, but still, like when you're doing it on your own, it's different than when you've kind of got that support along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of the established supports that were within, as I said, the framework that was established through the coaches and through their work with ECLI was really around the how do we encourage providers and leaders to take these pieces and bring them into their program without the coach being the one to do it. Acting as a guide, but then also making sure that you're empowering programs and leaders to take on those pieces on their own and really try to make that part of the culture within the programs. So
Yeah.
it's exciting.
Teaching them to fish, right? Like doing it on their own. That's the goal, is to hope that you don't have to be there the whole time, but they can learn to do that continual improvement on their own, and they've got like a structure for it. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Kim. It was wonderful to
welcome.
hear your story. I'm actually gonna we'll move on and we'll turn it over to Delcia to hear about how LearnERS is being used in Rhode Island. So take it away.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Delcia Perdomo, and I'm one of the bilingual Bright Stars navigators for the Rhode Island Association of the Education of Young Children. Next slide. Today I'll be presenting how Rhode Island is supporting the family child care using the LearnERS program. I'll be going through the participation benefits, the press and post assessment, the material baskets, and how we choose our modules, and also the peer learning sessions. Next slide. The providers the family child care providers who participate in LearnERS will receive a Chromebook, 1 year of professional development approved by the Center of Early Learning Professionals. They will receive 12 months of coaching on the ERS using that informs the CQI. And providers will receive free high quality materials for the family child care programs. The providers will be compensated for the time. The providers who enroll in LearnERS will receive $15 an hour for 10 hours per month. And they'll get 1 hour for completing the modules. The other hour will be for the peer learning sessions. And then the other 8 hours will be for implementing the goals in the childcare. Next slide. As a part of how we can support the programs better, the participants will receive observation by a Bright Stars assessor using the figures. This observation will be a 3 full-hour observation. The reason for this will be that even though this observation will not impact the program negatively, if they obtain a high score using this observation, they can use their report to increase their star rating with Bright Stars. At the end of 12 months, the family child care providers will receive a post-assessment, and this report will be compared with the pre-assessment that we did before, to show how family child care had improved and growth in the it had improved and grow their programs. Our goal for them on these 12 months is for the programs to be able to increase their staff rating. These observations that we do help us in a lot of ways to support our programs, but there's two specific ways in which this will guide our work. The first one will be every participant in the LearnERS will receive a basket of materials. The way we decide how they get the materials is navigators and assessors will meet, and based on the focus report, we'll create a list of materials. And each participant will get a whole basket of high quality materials. The second part will be using these observations is how we choose our modules. Again, the navigators and the assessors will meet, and using the focus report will help the select the modules. They correlate with the areas of role and the areas of improvement. I'm sorry, the areas that needs to be improved and the areas that need more improvement. And that will benefit based on they find this in the figures. After we choose these modules, we choose those modules for the first 6 months. So the LearnERS program will last 12 months, but we'll be choosing the first modules for the 6 months. Navigator will send the calendar syllabus to the providers with the cohort, pointing out the assessment modules, the peer learning sessions, and any incentives they are happening in that month. How do we support the family child care providers with the peer learning sessions? These are meetings that we have, visual meetings that we have for 1 hour each month, and we will focus the contents on the modules. These modules are more like a conversation. That's what I wanted to say. Like, it's more like a conversation. It gives the providers an opportunity to provide and share the monthly goals and the lesson plans that they have learned. It gives them a chance to reflect on any goals that they have for that month and to share with other providers. Sometimes they share the activities. For example, last Monday, we had the science module, science and nature, and they were sharing like, how do they do, how are they doing some of the activities that they're doing, how they're spending time outside with the children, some of the books that they're using for science. So some of the providers are taking some notes about the other providers' activities that they are doing to also implement in their childcare. It's like a community resource that we have. We do LearnERS coaching visits. The navigator will provide feedback on the program using the focus reports, and they also give some tips about how to use the materials and how they can arrange their space. Based on the coaching visit that we do, we also, again, will make a list of materials that they need, and we'll provide another basket throughout the year. The LearnERS coaches visits, we navigators will provide feedback in these materials, but this is a perfect example of how all the support that we give the family child care providers come together. This program is one of my programs. So before she was part of the LearnERS program, this was her block area. She thought she had a defined block area. So after she did the module, after she did the peer learning lesson, after she did the coaching visit, she understood the difference between Legos and blocks, and what does it mean really to have a defined area. Again, this is the same provider. After she was watching the modules, she looked at our area, and she decided that she needed to move it to a more convenient space for children to be able to use the materials. So she wanted to move it and have like a little table in front of our materials, so that way kids had access to that table closer to the material. So she changed the space, and she made a more defined fine motor area. So our area was a little bit disorganized, and she had very few materials. So when we had the coaching visit, we helped her organize the materials, and also we made a list of all the materials that children will benefit from, and other and materials that children will be interested in. We don't have all the materials in the last picture because I ordered some materials for her. I didn't receive it, so we don't have all the materials that we have for her for that area. But as soon as we get everything, then we'll go back out with the basket and we'll give her the materials needed for that space. Currently, we have 18 family child care providers. We have 10 Spanish-speaking providers, and we have 8 English-speaking providers. So we have received very positive comments from the programs. They are telling us how much they appreciate our support. They're telling us how much they love this program, because before, our family child care providers feel like when they have these observations, they have to make the fixes themselves. And now they feel like they have so much support from one of their navigators and the assessors, and they are able to have more understanding of what they need to change, how they need to use the material. So they say they feel so much, they feel much more support now from our stars using LearnERS. I have to say that for me, as a navigator, this has been a very pleasant experience using LearnERS, because I can see how many more changes family checkers have done, and how excited they are to do the peer learning sessions, how they share the changes, how proud they are to see the changes they have made. And it has been so rewarding to see when they have the observations, they are getting really high scores. So they see they are doing a really good job, that they are really providing what those childs are in need. So for me, this LearnERS experience has been a great experience. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dulcia. It's really great to hear like the practical experiences and see the changes that providers are making. One of the questions, I think I'm going to kind of go back and start a little bit sort of from the beginning in the timeline, is from my experience, home-based providers are often really reluctant to be a part of the rating systems and to have people come in and do assessments in their programs and kind of participate in the bigger system. Is that your experience also?
Yes.
And how did you get providers to participate? I know you offered a lot of great incentives, but I'm sure that can't be all of it.
No, so yeah, it is. We always have come to the same issue about like they not wanting to participate. I think because they feel it's too much for them, or they feel like they can't do it. But I think you need to know your programs first. Like you have to build. For us, it's more about building that relationship, because if you build that relationship with the programs, we always an navigator telling them like, we are here for you, we are here to support you, we are here. It's like a little bit of holding their hands to it. So we made a lot of phone calls. It took a lot of visits going to their programs and explaining to them, this is what you're gonna get out of it, this is what we are trying to help you with. So it just a little bit hand holding, I think, for them. So yeah, I'll say that it was more like building that relationship with your program.
Yeah, and so you've been doing this for a while now, right? You've been working with providers before using LearnERS and since.
Yes.
And how do you see the work that you're doing, the coaching work that you're doing with providers? Has it changed since using LearnERS? And then if so, like how, like what ways?
Yeah, I'll say it's because before we did provide support, and we always did the observations, and after that did the feedback and provided the support that the program needed. But I think now we having those incentives help them more, because before it's like you need materials, but that's all I can tell you is that you need it. Now it's like you need materials and I'm gonna give it to you. I think for providers, they're using the tools, the figures, it's a lot. So having those modules where they can go one by one and having feedback on those modules are helping them supporting their programs, having them support the programs.
Mhm. And I don't imagine it's LearnERS that's able to like provide all of those incentives and materials. Somehow you must have had like some funding to help support that as well. But the selection of the materials and going from you need materials to being able to offer up materials. And it seems like my assumption is then it's not just whatever materials you're asking for, but materials that
Oh no, actually, when we are selecting the materials, we use their observation. So when the assessors will do the observation, they will come back to the office and meet with the navigators, and they will have a list of materials that the programs needs. So they'll tell us like dramatic play, these are the materials that she'll benefit from. In art, these are the materials, and we'll choose from those materials, and then we'll make the basket for them.
yeah, and you take those to those initial visits or those mid
Well,
checkpoint
we
visits.
do, yeah. So we do the initial visit one, and then through the year, because it's a through we do it through we do the 12 months to the 12 months period. We when we do the coaching visits, sometimes we do the coaching visits in the middle, at the beginning. It depends what again, using that figures observation, what we think they need at the moment, and then we can bring more materials, or we can wait until the midpoint and bring more materials. Yeah.
Yeah. And to, I think, clarify, there may have been a question or a comment that I noticed too about selecting the modules. So you organize the providers into small, like peer learning groups and choose the module based on that, or do you kind of do you pick modules and then find the providers that need that particular module? How do you do that?
So we use the figures report again, and we try to group the providers in cohorts. When we use the figures report, and we find what's the most what be the common theme or the common denominator that they need more help with, and that's how we group them. Like first cohort, there was 3 providers, and they were really need help in dramatic play, guiding shoulders to behavior, nature and science, and other things. But those 3 providers had almost the same score in the same items. So that's how we group them. Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's where the provider, you're using the assessments to find out where the need is and then group them together. So if
Yes.
they all have a need for science, then they're in that cohort that's working on science.
Yes.
I did see a question come in asking about where do you get the funding for the materials?
Oh, we get the funding from DHS.
Okay, so DHS has somehow prioritized all of the program improvement work,
Yes,
and you're able to budget for it that way.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Delcia, for sharing your story. I'm gonna turn it over to Susie now, and then I'm gonna bring everybody back at the end. But thank you. So Susie, let's hear about Arkansas and how you're using LearnERS there.
Thanks, Tara. Hi, everybody. I'm Susie Norris. I'm in Arkansas, and I work with Arkansas State University Childhood Services. And I think it's important to know that in our state, all of our specialists do similar jobs. We all wear multiple hats. So we all do coaching. We all provide technical assistance. We all complete the environment rating scale assessments. And because we all wear these different hats, we're all trained and reliable on the different tools. So we use ECRS 3 and ITERS 3 and FICRS 3 in Arkansas. We also do use SACRS U. And as we moved forward into using LearnERS, we offered each of these to our programs. So we had family homes that joined us, and then we had programs in which we did ECRS and ITERS. And then if they, although there's not a SACRS U for learners modules yet, those programs that had after school programs, we tried to help our programs choose which modules would be most beneficial and kind of help bridge those school age kids with the ECRS modules that were available on the scale. So as Kim was discussing, 2020 changed for all of us, and that pandemic shift happened. We were using the ERS software that Branna designed. We all had our tablets with the software on there, and we could no longer use that software, and we couldn't be in programs. So it was tough. We wanted to connect with our programs, and we wanted to provide continual coaching for them, and we wanted to live into continuous quality improvement with them. And this software was available to us. So instead of using the ERS assessment software, we shifted to doing LearnERS with our programs instead. In our state, we have state-funded pre-K, and we also have 0 through 5 programs, various funding, private pay, daycare type settings. So our Arkansas Division of Child Care and Early Childhood Education actually wanted and basically required many programs to be part of the LearnERS coaching system. And during this time, many of our programs were level 1 programs, and we were wanting to help shift them up to level 2. And the software was, all this timing came together just perfectly for us. So those programs that were being asked to make that shift from level 1 to level 2, their incentive was earned professional development. We didn't have other nice incentives that I've been learning about today for our program. So for us, it was a little bit of marketing. We were talking with our programs, sharing with them this unique way that they could earn professional development that was tightly tied to the ECRS and the ITERS scale, the FICRS scale. And that was incentive for them to have these bite-sized modules that they could learn from. And it offered us a way to stay in contact with our programs and live into that continuous quality improvement with them. So when I say all staff were excited about LearnERS, I'll say that we, the staff, the coaching staff, we were excited. We were excited about this opportunity to work with our programs, stay connected to our programs, keep those relationships strong with our programs, and we were ready to get started on this project. So in the beginning, like I said, here was this excitement. We're going to connect with our providers. We're going to offer them this unique way to just dig deeper. And as Kim talked about, the why behind the different indicators, items and indicators in the scale. And that was good incentive as we were marketing to them, right? You're going to earn professional development, and these are uniquely tied to the scale and that you use every day. So in the beginning, there was this excitement, and we learned as coaches how to use the software and how we could share it with our programs. And we soon found out that we were taking on programs with many staff, and it was challenging to getting them started on modules was one thing, but then as we were working on those peer learning sessions, we hit some challenges. So in particular, for us in the state of Arkansas, we have a lot of rural areas. And what we found was that the internet access was not equal. There was not equity across our state for internet and internet access. So working with programs and helping them find ways that they could connect or that they could have their staff connect. So the program might have good internet, but then staff would go home with this goal that they might do this on their smartphone or from a tablet at home, but they wouldn't have good internet access. So working with programs to try and find the best way to connect to the software. And then of course, during this time, staffing was at a premium. That was happening across the nation. It was hard to find staff. Staff themselves were under stress. This was another thing to learn and to do. So there was a lot of fluidity regarding staffing and how could we could connect them to modules, but how could we also connect in this peer learning session time with them? What was going to work best for programs? And there was a time element there. Do we do this during the workday? Do we come after hours during a staff meeting? Do they do this on their own time? And then how is that compensated for them when things were tight already? Numbers were down for children, staffing was tight. So trying to push all these pieces together was a challenge for our coaches. And the LearnERS software comes with a great template of how to get everybody started, connected, peer learning sessions, how they progress. But we found that we had to start thinking kind outside the box. How are we going to make this flexible and usable for our programs so that they could benefit from the LearnERS platform? I'll jump right into the success stories. What we found was that LearnERS the platform is bright, easy to use, easy to understand. So there's a lot of flexibility with that. And our providers could use it on a laptop, on a tablet, or their teachers on a smartphone. So that provided a lot of flexibility. And then we worked with our programs for those peer learning sessions. What would be best? Did we want to Zoom in end of day at a staff meeting where everybody was there? Was that too much to make staff stick around afterwards, after work, after a long day? They've got their own worries and their own stress during this time. So what were other ways we could connect with the teachers who are progressing through these modules and create these peer learning sessions, which were so important? That's a piece of this software that's so important, so that teachers can connect with one another. They can share their ideas, because as we know, when you're in your classroom, you're kind of in your own silo. So this opportunity to connect with one another, share ideas, talk about your goals, implementing goals, sharing your success stories, like that's just a very important piece of growth, continuous quality improvement, and built into this software. So our specialists really thought outside the box. They were very innovative. I had one specialist who the program really had a difficult time figuring out how to have everybody together for peer learning sessions. So she developed GroupMe type units for the peer learning groups. And most people have a smartphone at the end of their hand. So then, and that became kind of like using social media. So she would pose a provocative question related to the module that had just been completed. And then the GroupMe would provide that platform where everybody would connect and talk about what they had done. They could upload pictures of what they had done. So that was worked really well for a lot of our programs. And those teachers who didn't have good internet at home could often, pop on their phone really quick somewhere where they had good regional connection. And so those peer learning sessions worked in that way. We also had programs that wanted us to Zoom in at the end of the day. Computer was on the table. I Zoomed in and there was everybody out in the distance, and we walked through peer learning sessions in that way. As Kim mentioned, I'll say again and go into that a little bit more, it really mattered that the directors of programs were on board for using LearnERS, and that's where we saw the best success. So programs where directors were a little overstressed, the worries of the pandemic, the worries of numbers, the worries of staffing, when that was greater, then we didn't have as much enthusiasm and we didn't have as much success with those programs. But when directors were on board, this was a very successful professional development opportunity with programs, and those programs and voluntarily would respond to questions or to give us feedback about the successes they were seeing in their programs. And the feedback was good. One provider, I remember saying, she just walking down the hallway could hear the success from the classrooms, like the chaos was tamped down, or peeking in, she would have noticed a new room arrangement that was working better for children. So that was good success that we were hearing. And we are now back in classrooms. We're providing and conducting assessments again, providing in-classroom TA again. So for us, LearnERS has taken a back seat while we're back in the classroom to complete these assessments. However, one other success piece that's been beneficial for us, we were able to track, as we started assessments, who participated in LearnERS and who did not. And looking at that data, we're finding that programs that were part of the LearnERS platform during that time, at about 80%, were able to progress from level 1 to level 2. So we found some good success in that as well. And thank you for your time. And I'm looking forward to more conversation and any questions.
Thanks, Susie. Great to hear your story. I'm actually really surprised in like the percentage of programs that were able to move from level 1 to level 2. That's amazing. Like, it just really says a lot about
that was
what
exciting.
people were getting out of the program. Yeah, it strikes me in hearing people talk about LearnERS, about the things that make it successful, right? So there's lots of different pieces and different ways that it can be used. And it sounds like you point to the flexibility and the director's support as being big. I think I want to go back to, because it sounds really nice, like New Jersey had and Rhode Island have a lot of nice incentives that seem like monetary or like material things that they could give to people, and you really didn't have that. I mean, all you could do is say like, okay, we're going to give you some professional development hours. So how were you able to, and your team able to, really convince people to participate? And I get that it was required, but even stuff that's required, you can kind of get participation because they have to, and then people that actually like really engage and participate. So I'm really asking more about the people you were able to convince to engage. Like, how did
we really like I said, a little bit of a marketing, right? We really had to market to them how this professional development was tightly connected and tied to the scale, and that and because professional development hours required by the state didn't change, but here's an opportunity where you can participate in your hours with particular modules that are tightly connected to things that you yourself want to work on. So we really coached in a way that we helped them identify their personal goals and then tied them in with those modules. So they were working on their goals that they were setting. And I think that was helpful.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that I try to express to people as we orient people is this idea of it not being something extra that they have to do, but to see the connection of what they're already doing, the work that they're already engaged in, and how it's not something extra, but it enhances what they're already doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So there were some interesting things that you talked about as far as being creative about the peer learning and doing that in an asynchronous sort of way. So not everybody all together or online at the same time, meeting at the same time, but being able to sort of check in, do some group learning, talk about their own reflections or goals that they're working on, or whatever, answering the questions posed by their person, and the fact that people could do it on a tablet or smartphone, wherever the internet connection was the best for them. Mm-hmm. Did you have people on the other end of that who maybe were less tech savvy, and how did you help those folks?
Yeah, definitely. We had people that were less tech savvy, and not being able to go in and help them connect did present some problems. So again, just being flexible on the phone. Let's talk side by side. Have you used Zoom? And most of our programs had used Zoom by then, because that was the way that because we also do the professional development in the state for our providers, we were doing that by Zoom. So a lot of them had already done that. So then on Zoom, side by side, how to share a screen, and then walking them through it step by step. That was another way to help them at least get started. And then kind of hand-holding, the way Delicia kind of described, a little hand-holding initially until they became more comfortable.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Susie. I'm going to invite everybody back now.
Hi. I had a couple of questions just to pose to the group. I'm hearing this like peer learning and cohort approach and grouping by like topic. Did you like supplement that, or also obviously the coach knew what sessions or modules the individual was working on? So is there flexibility between an individual approach and a cohort approach? And what did you see the advantages of a cohort were? Like, why do it that way and not say to the coach, use the results from the assessment, match up about what module they're interested in doing, and then follow up and help them reflect on what's the benefit of this peer approach or cohort approach to the work?
So I can go first for
Sure.
New Jersey. So for New Jersey, when we were looking at, we thought about both options, to be honest, Debbie. We thought, do we approach it and kind of let people go with their own CQI journey, or do we form this cohort approach? Because it was a pilot, because we wanted to have those peer learning groups be, have a lot of discussion and a lot of peer learning, we did decide to move with the cohort approach. And again, we identified items in both the ITERs and the ECHRs that we felt like could complement what they were already doing. They were also items that we would hear from our rating team that also needed to have some of that exploration for CQI. And so that's how we ended up with the cohort approach. I think we got feedback on both things. Sometimes our cohorts were within the center, depending on how many classrooms in the center were participating, and some of them were across centers. There was positive and negative that went with both of those experiences. And I think it just really depended on who was in each of those cohorts, how much participation there was, how involved the directors were. I know Susie just mentioned that as well. So I think we saw a little bit of a difference between all of that. So that's how we
optimum size. What was the optimum size for a cohort of people working on this?
Sure. So we had about 6 to 10. We tried to arrange it based on we had several things: the age group, the time. We gave people different options as far as times that their learning groups could meet. So some we did in the evenings, some we did during the day. And again, it just depended on how we could mesh together those groups based on preferences for time, preferences for which age group they were in and which item they were on. So those were different, but we typically had about 6 to 10 in each of those groups. And I think we felt like that was a good number for discussion and for peer support learning.
Dulcia or Susie, either one of you want to weigh in?
Okay, I think for us, it was more about creating a community for the family checkup providers. They do work best that way, and for them to be able to share and compare their goals, and know that they have the support, not only the support from the navigators, but the support from the other colleagues. So it was more about having that community. For our cohorts, we have the most that we have are 4 family checkup providers. And that way it's not individualized per se, but yeah, we don't have we have everyone attention in that little cohort that we have. It's like a little cohort. Yeah.
So did you assign a certain coach to facilitate that cohort? Here we've gotten together a cohort, or was it usually providers that were part of the caseload already for that coach?
Yeah, so each navigator has I'm sorry, each navigator has their case law. So we have, if you have programs, for me, I have to say, for me, it was a little bit different because I have the Spanish cohort. So either if they are my family child care providers programs or not, so I'm assigned to the Spanish cohorts. But we were trying to do it in a way that every cohort went with their own navigators, or the navigators that were assigned.
Interesting. Okay, great. Susie, anything you want to add here?
I'll just jump in that we're broken up by regions. And so, yes, we also worked with our programs that we knew and had relationship with also, which goes back to Tara's question that may have helped with our marketing, right? We already had relationship with these programs. We were able to kind of help them with that buy-in. Not all of them, some of them were new to us. And then because family child care homes are, on their own, working in that space by themselves, we also did use cohorts with those. And I'll just say feedback wise, our family child care homes really appreciated new ideas and new perspectives from across other people. And that one of our directors said, I'd like to engage in other modules in the future, and I want to do that with other programs so that we can share ideas across programs.
Interesting, interesting. Well, thank you so much for, go ahead, Tara, chime in.
I was just going to mention, I know I'm not the one facilitating cohorts, but I do know that there are some clients who, because of the challenge sometimes of trying to coordinate, like Kim was saying, like the time of day that people want to meet and when they're available and which modules they're working on. I know some groups have done it so that there may be a coach that works with a particular program, director, teachers, but then they participate in a peer learning group that's facilitated maybe by a different coach within the organization, because they're holding meetings maybe in the evening or sometime that's more convenient for those people who are participating in the math module. So the peer learning facilitation, again, with LearnERS, you can be creative and flexible about how you approach it. Sometimes it's challenging just for the coaches with their caseload and how many programs that they're working with to try to facilitate with every single program or agency or provider. So just putting that out there is another option.
That's great. That flexibility, I'm sure, is an important attribute. Well, as we get ready to close up here, if each of you could just share your closing thoughts or ideas with our participants for today. Susie, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Deb. I would say to be flexible with yourself. So if something's not working the way that it's been outlined, the way that you learned it when you get your session with Branna on how to use this software, be flexible with yourself to work with your programs and create a way that it will work, because the software is designed with that flexibility in mind.
Dulcia, what would you add?
I'll say build a relationship with your programs. That way, you know what programs will benefit more from from participating in LearnERS. Be clear about your expectations. That way, you have a great communication to your programs. Be clear about what they expect. What are you expecting from them, and what they should be expecting from you. Again, be flexible. Meet the programs so they are. We are dealing with adults, and we know adults learn in a different way. So just be flexible and just meet the programs so they are.
Thank you. Thank you. Kim?
Sure. I'll echo what was already said, but also just mention that really embedding that reflective practice into the work, both for yourself. I think a lot of our coaches mentioned that in debriefing and talking with them about their own experience, and then also really trying to get your programs to embed that reflective practice within their own work each day. And again, being flexible about taking it if it's not working exactly how it is. If you're having that reflection, you're kind of coming back to that why. I think that piece is really important.
Finally, Tara.
Yeah, I think tying together everything that everybody has been saying, that theme of flexibility, and that LearnERS is really that continuous quality improvement framework, but it also is its own continuous quality improvement. So it kind of models, like you can use this to model that CQI approach, like how you use that. Teachers use it in their classroom, directors and program leaders can use it with their staff, coaches use it with, it kind of works at every level, that continuous quality improvement. So.
Well,
And I hope
gosh, I'd
people
like
try
to
it out. Yeah.
thank you guys so much for sharing your ideas, experiences, and ways you've used this particular tool to support staff to improve their practice. It's just been very informative. And I'd like to say to all of our participants today, when you close out of the session, an evaluation will pop up. Please take a moment to complete it, as your feedback informs and helps us improve our future work. I'd also like to thank all of our participants in today's webinar for coming to the session, sharing your ideas, comments, and questions. You can see how much they added value to the session, and I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. All the best.
Thanks for inviting us,
Goodbye,
Debbie.
everyone.
Bye.